edition of Chip Talks. I'm really excited to be bringing this to you today. We are still sponsored by Neighborhood Nutrition. If you are interested in sponsoring at Chip Talks or Chip Talks on the whole, certainly feel free to contact us. We will be looking for sponsors, and as you'll see, the content will continue to get better and better and better, and we'll build quite the library of stuff. This one is going to be like last week's, so I'm not sure which direction this one's going to go. I literally, I had a direction where I wanted to take this Chip Talks and talking about the sun. We're going to talk about the sun today. But it kind of went sideways. So I stopped and started about 6 different, let's say, presentations or how I want to approach this. But data is kind of always the same. So I want to communicate to you guys some data. But how you approach it, how you frame it up, that's what teachers do, right? So how do I take complicated information or information that might be controversial and present it to you in a way that is going to have an impact, that you're going to understand, that you're going to go, whoa, Chip, I've never really thought about it that way. Because that's really what I want to do. I have a lot of knowledge. So again, in my mind, and that's up to you guys to determine whether this is truth or not, but it's truth for me. I hold something called the Philosopher's Stone. If you're a philosopher or a lawyer or a scientist or a alchemist, that sounds like an arrogant and weighty claim. It is not at all. In fact, it's not an arrogant claim at all. It's a responsibility claim, let's say. So again, if I have knowledge, and I have knowledge that I feel like has been gifted to me from God, then it's incumbent upon me to teach that to you. It's incumbent upon me to translate that, to try to find, I could give you everything that I know in probably an hour, maybe take longer than that, but I could give you a bunch of bullet points, but they wouldn't mean anything to you, right? So it takes some translation of knowledge to be able to go from point A to point B. So all of these Chip Talks, if you've listened to the first one, and again, we always refer back to the first one, so I told you we'd do it, and we'll do it again in this one. Go back to the first one and listen to the first one, because that really describes human function at a high level. We're certainly going to be talking about human function in all of these. We'll talk about the sun in all these. It's that important to human function, and that's obviously why we're talking about it. But I want to challenge some ideas that you might have about the sun, and that's what I mean. This one might get a little uncomfortable. But again, I would encourage you to listen to what I'm saying. Do your own research. I'm not going to go woohoo or bro science on you guys. I'm not going to throw something out there that's I can't back up. Let's just say that. I mean, you guys will eviscerate me enough in the comments, right? So, I go out there on a bunch of woohoo. You're really going to get at me. And, I need to be able to defend what I say, and I can. And so I'm not going to really put things forth that are too speculative. I might challenge you to think about things, but again, I'm going to tell you when I am in speculation land or in bro science land, but for the most part, we're going to stay in hard science. So, in logic, right? So we'll do a lot of logic, we'll do a lot of philosophy, and we'll do some other things, but again, things that sort of invoke these higher truths. That's kind of where I want to get you guys, and where I want to get you thinking is up in these higher truths, not in the crap that we see on TV every day. Okay, so that's why it might be uncomfortable. It's challenging sometimes to think about this stuff, and it's a little hard and it's a little uncomfortable. But again, if it's going to help you, or if it's going to help someone you love with your health, then why not? It's worth the journey, I promise you. So, let me ask you this. What is the biggest, largest, most obvious physical thing that you can see, demonstration of God, that you see every day? That big, bright, shiny ball in the sky. I mean, there's no question about that. So, if God expresses through nature, The most important expression of God that we see every day is the sun. Absolutely. Without the sun, life on earth would be impossible. We absolutely could not live without the sun. Our lives depend on it. Our sustenance depends on it. And our functioning depends on it. So it is super duper important. In fact, I will never do a talk more important than this talk, because the sun is just that integral and critical to how we function in our lives. But we take it for granted and we don't really think about it. So we're going to think about it today. So hang on to your hat. So let me ask you this. And again, this is where I'll tell you something weird. When my science begins to merge with my spirituality, I know I'm onto some high truths, right? Because there's high truths in science, there's high truths in logic, there's high truths in law, there's high truths in math, and there's high truths in spirit, right? So when those two things start coming together, or multiple things there start coming together, I know that I'm onto some pretty high truths. You can, take it for whatever you take it for. That's up to you, but that's my world, I guess, my paradigm. So let me ask you this. Are you an animal? Are you a beast of the earth? In every religion, the deity, the higher power, makes, and I'm a Christian, so it's, I'll refer to Christianity a lot, but it doesn't really matter. This is ubiquitous to all religions. But all religions call out man as a special being. We are not a beast of the earth. We are not a plant of the earth. We have functions like both plants and beasts, but we're not like them, right? The closest thing that you can categorize a human to is a mammal, but we're about as far from an ape as you can get. I mean, genetically, are we related? Yes, absolutely. We're related to an eel too, but we're related. But again, you're something special. God has called that out. God calls that out in the Bible. God calls that out in, Buddhist teaching. God calls that out in Muslim teaching. God calls that out everywhere. That you are something special. You are not a beast of the earth. You work different, and that's kind of where I'm going scientifically. If you look at how do you categorize like mammals, right? Do you have hair? What's your skin do? What's hair do on a mammal? It has to do with the sun. Isn't that cool? So your skin is very receptive to sunlight. Your skin is where we produce vitamin D. And we have to have the sun to produce vitamin D. If you're a cow or a bear or an ape, again, you don't have any issue producing vitamin D. You produce vitamin D automatically through your hair follicles and your skin follicles. So you don't have to be in the sun or not have to be in the sun. That just happens. But for us, for humans, we have to be in the sun. Okay? So you can look any of this up, by the way. So all research back. But we're just a little different, right? So we have humans have this and it's not unique. All life really, every cell responds to the sun. Every cell will have a circadian rhythm. All plants have circadian rhythms, obviously. They respond to the sun because they photosynthesize. But you respond to the sun in a special way because of your skin, which we cover all the time, which we'll get there, but we'll get to that little deal. But I want to make this point, and I want us to begin, if you can, again, it's up to you what you do, but I do this for myself. I differentiate myself from the beasts of the earth. I'm a human. I'm special. I'm sovereign. I'm divine. God made me that way. And again, it's only that way if I claim it. If I act like a beast of the earth, well, then, I'm right there. There are some, believe me, here on earth that want you to think that you are a beast of the earth, that you are something to be herded like a sheep and enslaved like a cow, and managed like livestock. That is not who you are. You are special, very special. And you're special partly because of your skin, and you're special because of what lives inside of you, which is a beautiful, multidimensional soul. Okay? So, do animals have souls? I don't know. Probably. I think my dog does. He has emotion, and he has a lot of things that you would associate with a soul, but it's not like mine. It's not like yours. That's a little different. A lot different, actually. Okay, so that's kind of a concept, isn't it? You didn't think it was going to go there, did you? The religious aspects of the sun are profound, just absolutely profound. And again, I'm a Christian, so that's what I believe. But I do believe that there are, let's say, truths beyond Christianity, let's say. And so what do I mean by that? Well, before, and I'm showing some slides here, I'll talk you through them if you're listening at home. But really, before there was Christianity, there was something. And before there was that, there was something else. And before that was something, there was something before that. So man has always built, let's say, religions, has built a structure around how to communicate truths. So how do I communicate the truth of the structure of the divine to you? Well, I need something, right? So I need and sadly, it looks like we've built these institutions more as kind of control. So again, why wouldn't I just teach you about God and teach you about, how that works and how energy flows and how it all works, right? Why wouldn't I just teach you that? Because it's there. You can go find all this stuff. I'm not, again, I'm just digging up old stuff, right? So, but again, it's easy to teach you this stuff. So why do I need an intermediary? Why do I, and again, Jesus came to teach us this stuff directly. He didn't go through any intermediary. He didn't go through the church at the time. He didn't go through, he didn't go through the Pharisees and the Sadducees to give his message from God to you. God gave that message directly to him, and he communicated it directly to you. So do you need an institution? Do you need an institution to hear God's message? No, absolutely not. We don't need an institution to hear God. You just got to listen. And you got to pay attention, right? So, and that's what Jesus came to teach us, literally. Now, is it nice to get together with people and worship? Absolutely. Is it nice to have a community around belief? Absolutely. So I'm not, dissing on anything at all. I'm just saying, again, God's told us how it works, right? He told us with Jesus. I mean, Jesus told us how this works, and God communicates directly to you. You don't need a priest. You don't need a minister. You don't need a, whatever. Choose your religion. And this is bigger than Christianity, obviously. So, again, God communicates directly to a Muslim, too. They don't need a cleric to go through, and he communicates directly to a Buddhist. They don't need a priest, to go through. So God communicates to us directly, at least in my world. Now, the reason that I'm bringing this up is I just want to point out, because this is a little bigger than the sun, okay? But I want to point out that there are these institutions that exist, and these institutions, again, aren't really there to serve us. So they kind of shield us from higher truths. And there's always a person, there's always an individual, who is, so like, if you look at, let's say, pharma, there's researchers and there are doctors that stand, between you and whatever the truth is, right? So they have to be there to translate it for you. We're not smart enough, apparently, to get there on our own. We need translators that come through institutions. But anyway, in the institution that I want to kind of point at, and I know this is sensitive, but it's, religion, right? So again, Jesus came and told us he was the Son of God, and S-O-N also can be spelled S-U-N, Son of God. And he came to teach us that we don't need intermediaries. God communicates directly with us. God touches us directly and can, right? So, isn't that a great and cool and beautiful message? And, how corrupted have our institutions made that message in order to make themselves important, in order to stand between you and the truth? If you look, there's institutions standing between you and the truth everywhere. God always gave us the cures to heal yourself. Again, you just need knowledge, but the cures are in nature. God gave us plants. I mean, again, we're going to talk a lot more. That's all I talk about is what God gave us in nature and how that's used to heal us. So that's there. That's always been there. You don't need a doctor to translate that for you. You don't need a pharmacist to mix that up. You can grow that in your backyard. And it's safe. You can try it on your own. So again, we have these institutions that have been created. They were created by man. We created them. So somebody created pharma and the medical, the Carnegie Mellon Institution and the Rockefeller Foundation with the Flexner Report created pharma and created medicine. So there's that, right? So, but with a point that I want you to look at is that these institutions are there, right? So in pharma, does that mean that all doctors are bad? No, absolutely not. Does that mean that hospitals are bad? No. But it means that the things that form those institutions and kind of the control and education around those institutions is blocking you from higher truth. Banking would be a similar institution. We all know that we're creator beings and that when we really are intentional and we want to create something and we're purposeful and intentional about what we want to create, we hit the resource button and stuff shows up, right? Or it should. Doesn't work that way here. But button's kind of broken. You have to be super duper intentional. But if you are, you'll get what you need. Give us this day our daily bread. It might be scary as shit every day. But again, we'll get our daily bread. That's God's promise to us. But it certainly looks like that resource button, there's something standing between us and God with that resource button. And there is. It's called banking, right? You got to go to a banker. He's got to be the translator. He's got to be, your project, your intentional creative project may or may not be good enough for my bank. So I may or may not give you resources. You see how this works, guys? Yeah. Hopefully you do. Again, if you don't, you will, because we're all kind of just waking up. Don't really have to do anything. Just sort of be present, and you'll wake up to this. I'm just sort of an early riser, okay? Yeah. So we've beat institutions to death, haven't we? Okay. So let's move along here, and I've got my notes because, again, I didn't, this could go so many different ways, and there's so much here. Again, we're going to get into how the sun directly affects human health in a second. But I wanted to challenge you a little bit with some higher thinking. And the thing that, I really want to challenge you with was Jesus the Son, S-U-N, of God. I mean, again, how does God manifest to us every day? It's that big, bright, shiny ball that we see every single day. And how hard is that truth, obfuscated with chaos and confusion? And it is. So as you go start digging into some of these things, that is what you will find. So, Jesus as the Son of God. So what I've got up on my screen now is just a Jesus picture that we've all seen, with a halo kind of behind him. But that halo is very in symbology. Again, that symbol, it comes up a lot in symbology as a symbol of the sun. So you see a lot of references to Jesus as, the Son of God. Obviously, we know that. But also S-U-N, Son. So again, our history might have been messed with a little bit, let's just say. If you don't have a sense of that yet, I would suggest that you just, do some poking around. History's written by the victors. I'll just ask you this, right? Now, you're a godly person, I'm sure. You surround yourself with godly people. I'm a godly man. My wife is a godly woman. Do you live in a godly world? Do you live in a godly world? I hope your answer is not yes, because we don't, right? We live in this world is out to take your money, destroy you, ruin you, wreck you, humiliate you. Just we have to fight so hard just to survive in this evil freaking world. Okay? How does evil manifest in this world? Institutions. Okay? So everywhere you look, you're going to see an institution, and again, that institution is going to crush you or want to crush you or define you or isolate you or, make you not worthy, right? So we live in kind of this evil world, and, I noticed this a couple of years back. My wife and I were looking for a movie to watch, and it's like, why is every movie about devil, death, murder, killing, war, mayhem, scary horror movies? It's hard to find movies about family, about Christian values, about helping each other, about, where we go one, we go all kind of stuff. Yeah, it's hard to find, right? So why don't we make movies like that? It's because we live in a freaking evil world. But, thank God we're good people. And again, we can translate into, and I think this is all changing, by the way. I think we're actually flipping this right now. In fact, I think I've been given this information, honestly, to help flip all this. So how's that for a, strange statement? But there you go. Because I keep getting more information, which is wonderful. And I'll keep giving it to you guys, which hopefully you think is wonderful. Okay, so are there any other and again, I'm tying kind of this to religion in a way, because the importance of this, I want you to recognize. So we see lots of pictures of Jesus. There's lots of, let's say, tying of Jesus to the Son, S-U-N, and also the S-O-N of God. There's also, what I'm showing now is solar symbols. And again, there's lots of solar symbols that we see all the way back to Egypt. Now, again, before there was Christianity, there was a religion, Judaism, but there was more than just that. Before Judaism, there was religions. You can go back and back and back and back and back. The Chinese obviously have a very old religion. The Indians, the Vedic books teach an old religion. But the Egyptians have about the oldest religion out there. Again, Akhenaten, he was the first sun worshiper. The Egyptians worshipped the sun. Now, the other thing I want to show you is, and again, in my mind, history is written by the victors. There's some interesting buildings all over the world. So the Capitol, the courthouse, the university, the cathedral, the institution. So these buildings are common throughout the world, and they're in every major city in the world. So they're everywhere, and they all have this Romanesque architecture, right? The other thing that you're going to find around these buildings is these columns. They call them victory columns or victory arches. And every single victory arch will have something called a quadriga. And a quadriga looks like this. So again, it's what I'm showing is, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. So what I'm showing is a chariot driven by 4 horses, and it's usually, driven by Helios, or, the sun god, if you will. But in it's Constantinople, it's Constantine in Constantinople, it's, others in other cities, or they claim it is. But what I'm saying is this symbol is everywhere, of 4 horses drawing a chariot with some luminary, let's say, riding in it. So again, this predates Christianity by a fair bit. I would say that these buildings, if you go back and, you could go back and read about when they say they built these buildings in the 1800s. Well, again, that's crap, right? So they all look like Versailles. It was built in the 1600s. They all look like stuff that was built in Constantinople in the 4th century. So again, they're very, very old. But I would just challenge you guys to open your mind up a little bit about the sun here. So, what is the strongest physical expression of God that we see every day It is the sun. Okay, and does the sun affect us? Yeah, absolutely. So we'll get into that in a second, but I want to kind of continue to pound down these, let's say, higher truths, and then we can always get down into the weeds about how the sun affects you. And I'll leave you with that at the end. And really what you can do with the sun, to kind of how you can use the sun, let's say, to improve your health. So I want to talk a little bit about a symbiotic relationship that we have with plants. So how does God get us food? How does God, we need really three things, right? So we need water, we need oxygen, and we need food. How does God get that to us? With the sun. So again, the sun is going to basically provide heat. And again, we need heat and blah, 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 all that. But the sun is going to provide us with all these things. But directly, the sun provides us with food through plants. So we have an intermediary, but we have a symbiotic relationship with plants. So think about what a plant does. A plant takes in sunlight and uses sunlight as energy to produce food, chemical energy that we use. A plant also needs something from us. So it needs carbon dioxide that we produce, and it takes that carbon dioxide and turns it around and produces oxygen, which we need. As we eat, and the other sort of symbiosis here is bacteria. So again, as we eat chemical energy from plants, that keeps us going. We respirate, so we give CO2 for plants, and we take in O2 from plants. When both of these things die and begin to decay, they provide fuel for bacteria that breaks everything down and kind of starts the cycle over. So again, we're in this beautiful relationship with nature, but the sun is at the core of this relationship. It doesn't work without the sun. Nothing would go without the sun. Okay, so last bit. How does the sun really affect us, right? So that's why we're here. That's why you turned in to Chip Talks today. How does the sun affect us? Well, it does quite profoundly, okay? So first of all, we're kind of the only thing on Earth that has skin like we do and that reacts to the sun with the skin like we do. So we produce vitamin D through that reaction, and that's a very, very important reaction to our being, right? So producing vitamin D, we all have realized through COVID and things like that vitamin D is super important to our immune system, and it's part of, the core of our being is this sort of production of fats into energy through vitamin D synthesis, cholesterol, really. So we know that that's super duper important. We know that that's super important, but are there other things that happen with the sun? Well, yeah, absolutely. And again, we just don't think about this because it's so obvious and right in front of our face. But let's break it down a little bit. So, where do you take in light? We take in light all over us, and we take in, again, visible light is reflectant off things, but there's light below visible that penetrates things, right? So light, photons are constantly moving around us and through us, these photons that are coming from the sun. We take those in through our eyes, and we have photosynthetic reactions in our eyes. So the mitochondria in our eyes absolutely photosynthesize. They are sensitive and they send signals. So the cells of our eyes are sensitive and they send signals based on light input, based on mitochondrial light input. They send signals down the SCN. Again, you can look that up. I can never see the nucleus, but it's part of your hypothalamus and your connection to your eyes. But basically, they send communication down the SCN to the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus then decides, how is it daytime or nighttime, and what hormones do I need to now begin to produce based on cycles? Because this is all about clock, okay? So it's all about our 24-hour cycle around the sun. Well, how does that work? Through our eyes. Through our eyes hit our hypothalamus hippocampus, and again, our hypothalamus hippocampus will then either hit our pituitary or our adrenal axis, depending on what we need to do, to start making hormones to do things. So if you just think about this, we're a very logical machine. You know, it doesn't make sense for us, let's say, to be repairing muscle all the time. I mean, if you're going to build a house, you know, you have to sort of deliver construction materials and do your build and then clean up. You don't want to continually deliver construction materials to the house. That doesn't help it get built quicker. In fact, it wrecks, you know, your ability to build the house if you deliver too much construction material. So there's always a balance between repair, let's say, and cleanup, or, you know, build and burn is what I say, or fasting and fed is the way to look at it, you know, metabolically. But the way that we're designed as a machine is we're designed to break down things more than we are to build them up. We kind of have these master precursors, and then we kind of chop them up and use them as chemical mediators, but dietary fats are our biggest master precursor. But I would also argue that so is light, because light cues so many of these hormone interactions. So again, a female cycle is cued by light. Males have cycles, are cued by light. Our 24-hour sleep-wake is cued by light. So here's another way to look at this, and this is kind of what I'm showing on the screen now. So all I've done is just a Google search. I just put in the words hormones and sun. I've got 121 million results. So that would say, well, it's common terms. But are they associated? Well, yeah. I mean, I've just got page after page after page of sunshine and hormone stuff, right? So, you know, I'm on page 3 and I'm still into studies and all. I'm not even into the blogs and the woohoo yet. You know, so again, there's lots of data out there that would indicate the strong action of the sun on our hormones. But that's how the sun affects us mainly, is it's our hormones. Interestingly, like a baby, so some of you guys might have had this happen. And in fact, our science advisor actually had this happen with his child and was just recently talking to me about this. So like if your baby is jaundiced, let's say your baby's born premature, the liver is a funky and sensitive organ. And in a baby, that liver is not real mature. It doesn't have much ability to help, you know, with stuff. It's got some basic, got to survive, right? But not a lot. So liver is pretty important, but some babies, especially if they're born premature, will be born jaundiced. Well, what they do with a jaundiced baby is they wrap them in LEDs that give them certain spectrums of light. What that light does is it affects their blood. Listen to this, okay? Again, this is going sideways, I knew it would. If I have hemoglobin, which is your blood molecule, okay? And what hemoglobin does is it's a molecule, iron, oxygen, and that happens through your lungs, right? And then you take that oxygen to cells, and that's kind of how you oxygenate cells, how you provide energy to cells to run. But hemoglobin has a look as a molecule. It's got a metal right in the center of it called iron, okay? If I popped out that iron and I put in magnesium, now I have a different molecule called chlorophyll, okay? And what chlorophyll does, its purpose is it takes energy from the sun, because it's a pigment, okay? So it takes energy from the sun and it builds energetically, and then it'll give off that energy pew, in mitochondria. Pew. And that's how photosynthesis works. Well, what about hemoglobin? It's a pigment. Does it react with light? Yes. Does it do the same thing? Probably. Again, now we're into some new stuff. So now we're into some stuff that needs to be more deeply studied, which is always fun when you kind of hit the wire. So we're at the fence, Billy. We can't go no further. So that is where I've hit the wire on that particular exercise. But there's no question that hormones affect us. So point of this is, if you're a shift worker, you're challenged right off. You buy some lights, some red lights. You're going to have to play some games with your body to get you back to normal. Again, you don't want to be a shift worker. Let's just put it that way. You will gain weight, more weight than normal. You won't be able to have babies like the rest of us, and your immune system will be compromised. That's what happens when we wreck up our circadian rhythms. And that's hard documented evidence. You know, anybody can kind of go look that up. But we want to be able to have babies, have a good immune system, and not be obese, right? So we want to go with the flow. And so what that flow looks like to me, again, in the big flows that we have, our big clocks are set around two things. The sun, which we're talking about now, and our diet, let's say our food intake, which we're going to talk a lot more about, but we've already talked about quite a bit. Those are highest truths, okay? That's how you work. Again, when you eat, you do certain things, you set off a certain, let's say, ballet of things that happen in your body. And when the sun comes up and the sun sets, it does the same thing. So you can't really get above those as the truths. That's as high as it goes, okay? But there's a rhythm to things, and there should be, right? Could we be more? I'll leave you with this because this is kind of a good one. So could we be more than we are? So I started this by talking to you guys about the beasts of the earth and the plants of the earth, but you're special, and we are special. So I think we can be more. That's what I'm seeing in my science. You can rise above the beasts of the earth, but we have to rise. And we have to rise by understanding how we fell. How did we fall? We ate an apple, we became ashamed, and we put on clothes. Does any of that have to do with diet and the sun? It does. Isn't that cool? Isn't that neat? So that's where we're at, boys and girls. We're at pretty high truths. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Again, we'll be back next Friday with a new one. I think I'm going to talk about diabetes because I found a big flaw in the 1AC test, let's just say. So I want to talk to you about that. If you have diabetes or someone that you love has diabetes, this will be a good show for you. If you've had arterial disease, if you've had anything regarding blood vessels, high blood pressure, any of that, this will be a great show next week because we'll dive into that in a similar way. We'll get way more in the weeds, though, on how you work. This one was a high level, but this one had to be done, so we got to start somewhere, and we have to start building, let's say, these higher truths first so that we can build the sub-truths under them. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you listening, as always. I enjoy doing these. It's a pleasure to teach you, and please share these with your friends.